And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Welcome back to another edition of the Radio Free California Network. A tragic day in Oregon as another mass murderer has struck. A killer went onto the Umpqua Community College campus and shot at least 20 people. The report started out as 7 to 10 dead. Now it says 13. It's a breaking story. We're going to stick with it. We're going to have some live feed and keep you abreast of it. But we're also going to talk about why this happens. We're not going to talk about guns. We'll leave that to President Obama. We'll leave that to Josh Earnest. We'll leave that to Piers Morgan, who put a tweet out and said 45 dead, zero, since X date, and zero new gun laws passed. Because we know that you're intelligent enough to know that gun laws don't stop determined mass murderers, killers with evil intent in their hearts. And I'm embarrassed that the President of the United States and his spokesman would automatically go straight to gun control rather than empathy and sympathy for the victims, rather than a constructive dialogue, because evidently this deeply disturbed individual, for whatever reason, and we don't know the reason right now, but he left some clues. We're going to look at his conversation that he had online, and we're going to be joined a little bit later in the program by Dr. Gina Loudon, who is a psychologist, and get some insight, because we have passed many gun laws. We continually pass gun laws. We infringe the Second Amendment every time someone does something like this. And we tolerate a really strange narrative where people say, they talk about guns, they talk about access to guns, they talk about the ease at which you can acquire one, they talk about the various types of guns. You'll have breathless breaking news on CNN, and they'll talk about the weapons left behind and what it tells us about them, and this, that, and the other thing. But in the end, none of that will prevent another shooting. But something could have. Clearly something could have. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what could have stopped this from happening before it happened. And that question is a much deeper question than whether or not he had a 10-round clip, a 14-round magazine, whether he was carrying an assault weapon, said breathlessly by an anchor at CNN, or whether he was carrying simply a high-capacity magazine for a typical semi-automatic weapon. The bottom line is he used weapons because he was intending to kill. And the real question for me is, what does this say about our society? What does this say about where we are as a people? And when you hear some of the information that he posted online, and then the response of other individuals, you will be shocked. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. And I can't help but just feel something today. I feel sick inside that this happened. I feel tremendous empathy and sympathy for the families who have just lost perhaps the best and brightest hope of their family, their child who was going to a college, minding their own business in Roseburg, Oregon, which is a little lumber town. It's about an hour away from my friend's house. I was just up there. And one thing that we don't like to do in our current society and let it wash over you. because I think as Americans, we become so used to instant fixes, because then if we're doing something, it makes us feel better. If we can fit it into a narrative that fits a stereotype, we feel better. But this is an evil that we cannot control. We could minimize it to some extent. We talked about allowing people to exercise a right they already have, by the way, to conceal carry and all that. But I'm not looking for easy answers. I'm trying to figure out. I just don't believe that the sentiments expressed on that social media site are the sentiments of America 40 or 50 years ago.
No, I
and
don't either. I think
something is very different.
Abortion. Yeah. I think the devaluing of life is absolutely key here. I mean, we've allowed a Holocaust in this country and we're in total denial about it. We've watched a bloody baby squirm and try to live on a table while people cut it up and sold its body parts, and we are making excuses for it, Tim. I don't think you really have to look a lot further to understand what's wrong with the soul of a nation that does something like that.
Well said. I mean, we've been talking about that on this show extensively, and the only thing that I can think as well, in addition, is that as a nation we have moved away from God. We've moved away from spirituality. We've moved away from looking inward at our own soul, and there is something rotten in the heart of man that only God can fix. You can't legislate evil away. You cannot fill an empty soul by funding mental health programs.
No, you can't. And worse than that, it'll end up funding more propagation of the same evil that has already thickened our souls in this society to begin with. And so that's why I always want to warn, because people immediately they want to say, "Oh, no, this is a mental health problem. Please don't come and take our guns." And I want to say, yes, it is a mental health problem, but it goes so much deeper, Tim, than mental health. It goes all the way to the very root of our souls in this country and where we are. And that's why every day the news seems to get more and more shocking, because it is a soul problem at this point.
Well, Dr. Gina Loudon, did you have any other thoughts on what you saw today that we could take away?
Just to be sure that we do pray for the families involved, and that we speak up at our school boards, at our community college boards, and we make sure that we have trained, armed people in our classrooms so that these kinds of things don't continue, and that we continue to fight for our Second Amendment right.
That's Dr. Gina Loudon. She is the host of America's Trends with Dr. Gina, and which is on U2 America, not YouTube, U2, TOO. And thank you, Dr. Gina, for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim. Always a pleasure. Thanks.
We are going to take a quick break, and we will come back with your call. So if you're on hold, stay there. If you're listening, don't touch that dial. 323-746-TALK. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. going to go back to the phones here at the Radio Free California Network, and we've got Brian calling from, I can't see where you're from, Brian, but I know you're a combat Marine veteran, and I thank you for your call.
Yes, Tim, I talked to you yesterday. I'm up here in Apple Valley is where I live, and I talked to you yesterday, and I think with what happened today, it was fitting that I kind of call you back, comment on.
Yeah, I'm very glad to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, this goes back to the whole, gun-free zones and how they do not work, and it's amazing to me. It's just such common sense that if a criminal knows that there's a place where he can go and he doesn't have to worry about someone testing him, he's going to take the path of least resistance. And the average, I just looked this up, the average police response time to a 911 call is about 4 minutes. Now, in a gunfight or something to that magnitude, a shooting or whatever, that's a lifetime. And if you have, again, this goes back to trained civilians who are responsible gun owners, that shooting, whether it doesn't take place because that shooter knows there's a possibility that they're not going to be able to commit that crime, to someone just saying, okay, I can stop this guy, is going to be within seconds or tens of seconds instead of a 4 minute. So you go from, I haven't got confirmed kills yet, but I've heard anywhere from 13 to 20. You go from 13 to 20 victims to maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. And of course, this begs the question, and I can't help but raise it because on the one hand, you have people like President Obama calling for more gun control, but the same exact individual, President Obama, would support, and so do pretty much everyone on the left. We see it here in California. They want to ban concealed carry on campus. They want to ban even former cops or military from carrying on campus. Here at our universities, there was a bill introduced to do that here in California. And yet the opposite would be the pathway toward mitigation, essentially. So they're creating victim zones. Do you think there's any possibility they're creating these victim zones and saying, hey, maybe if we just sacrifice and dangle out there this big, fat, gun-free zone and let everybody know about it and broadcast it far and wide, that if we get enough of these killings in a row, then we can literally do what Great Britain and Australia did and just ban the Second Amendment altogether?
Yeah, I think you're kind of spot on that. Where I can't say that I would hope that they wouldn't want, someone on the left wouldn't want people to die. But here's the problem: is the ends justify the means. It goes right back to Saul Alinsky and that whole playbook of, if we do have to sacrifice enough Americans to get gun-free zones everywhere, and in that way you're basically taking away your whole Second Amendment right, then yeah, I think you're kind of onto something there. It probably is their agenda to do that. So they will let these things happen and play it up. And again, on the left, for them, it doesn't matter what the end result is, as long as you feel good about what they do. So they could say, and they keep on saying, well, we're getting these gun-free zones, and even though more people are dying, their heart is in the right place. So for them, at the Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon,
tomorrow, the day after, and for the next 10 years, if they pass, let's say they double down on gun control. So now they're really, really, really serious about it. And they make it a felony to even bring your gun on campus or bring a knife over a certain length, bring any type of weapon of any kind, right? And you have students out there who know that this is the law, and then an active killer comes on campus. That ain't going to stop them unless you have a gun to back up your position. The law is just words on paper. We got to end it there. Sorry about that, Brian. We will be right back with more of your calls. If you were looking for the Radio Free California Network, you found it. I'm your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor of California. We were interrupted by a break talking to Brian, actually, you're never a former Marine, are you, Brian?
No, once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's right. That's right. Well, once again, thank you for your service. And you were starting to make a point. I kind of made an extended one and wanted to give you a chance to respond with some final thoughts on this whole thing.
Again, this just kind of goes back to the whole, we should have a right to defend ourselves as that first line of defense. When you look at, like I stated earlier, average response time for a 911 call is 4 minutes, and that's a lifetime in a gunfight or a shooting. And if there was one or two people there in that school that had proper training and knowledge of firearm and were carrying, they could have put a stop to that gunman. One point that I did want to make is, if a person is hell-bent on going in and doing some damage, you can't stop that. You can't really predict that either. If it's ex-lover or disgruntled employee, they're going to go in there and do what they're going to do. But you wouldn't have the casualty rate that you would like today, where it's the 13 to 28. Again, I'm not sure what the number is. It would be around 2 to 3, but at least you're stopping it. And you can't, again, predict that or stop them from starting it, but you can stop it from it reaching its maximum point.
Well, exactly. And look, I'm trying to figure out what kind of gun control, what kind of new laws the president is even thinking about, because it's pretty tough to get a gun in most places. You have to pass a background check in almost every one of the 50 states. So right there, doesn't that sort of, what more do you want beyond looking at whether or not somebody's got a criminal history or is been incarcerated, or I'm looking for the right word, but been committed for some sort of a mental health episode. Many states bar ownership until you get some special clearance by a doctor or what have you. So there's all kinds of protections in place, and yet I'm trying to figure out what more does he want?
Yeah, and well, I mean, you and I, Tim, we know what they want. We know what their end game is. I mean,
I do.
The problem is, yeah. But for us, for me, it just makes sense. It's like you lift the restrictions on the responsible citizens of this state or the country or whatever. For an AR, in California, they ban 30-round magazines. You have to have a bullet button. That bullet button is a $5 part that you can get anywhere, and it takes just a few minutes to swap out if you're a criminal and wanted to do that. Magazines, you could go take a trip to Arizona or whatever, and you're illegally bringing them in, so you're breaking the law, but as a criminal, you don't care anyway. So the laws that they're putting forth, and I know you agree with me, it does nothing but hurt law-abiding citizens.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point. Okay, so let's say that the killer is standing there and he starts pointing his gun at you. You can hold up the law book, and it ain't going to stop that bullet. It might slow it down a little bit, but it's words on paper. Now, if they made a simple, substantial change, let's say that they say, hey, we're not comfortable with students carrying on campus. We don't trust the students, but they're going to allow some administrators or teachers to simply exercise their Second Amendment, not be denied the right to be able to protect their lives and the lives of those whom they're charged with, the students who they're entrusted with. And if they had concealed carry permits and had done a little bit of training, why not?
Exactly. And I agree with that 100%. I've got a few friends that are teachers, and I've had this conversation with them before where, if I was the principal or vice principal of a school and this was allowed, you would put it out there. Hey, guys, come to me in private, because I believe 100% more in concealed carry than like an open carry. So I would post signs, hey, teachers are concealed carrying and will defend the students. But you go to
right,
those
and you're not
teachers
going to
and say,
know
"Hey,
which
look."
ones. You'll never know who it is.
Exactly.
So then,
Exactly.
that creates
So-
a level of uncertainty for the killer.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you have open carry, then you're going to be the first one targeted. If someone, busts into your store.
I'm not recommending open carry. But I actually here's an interesting thing. When I was in the assembly, I proposed a bill after the Sandy Hook shooting, and I was inspired by Vicky Soto, that incredibly brave teacher, who literally gave over her life to save every one of those students that she could. If she had just had a little .22 revolver, I mean, just like the cheapest dime store gun you can think of, it's still a weapon. She might have had a fighting chance instead of just being slaughtered, and who knows? But so what I did is I made a proposal, and I called it the School Marshal Program, the School Marshal Plan, and I called it a plan because it's basically simply taking existing law in the 1995 Gun-Free School Zone Act. They actually slipped in a clause that said, if you have a concealed carry and if you have the permission of the superintendent, you can carry on campus. That is in California state law. So in my law, I acknowledge that fact, and it hit the papers and people freaked out. But what was amazing is a newspaper did a poll. 51% of Californians favored teachers being able to carry if they had a concealed carry and if they got some training. So my bill was to provide training, and the plan was for them to partner with their local PD or with some police agency and get basically free training so that it wouldn't cost the school budget anything, and they could get credit toward professional development out of going for it. But the bottom line is now you would have some frontline defenders who could be there in that 4-minute gap. It doesn't turn them into cops. It just turns them into lifesavers. It's like having a fire extinguisher and what do you call those, EpiPen or whatever, some life-saving devices on hand.
Yeah, and I had no idea about that law, how that was written in there in that 1995 gun law. But it makes sense.
We were shocked.
The problem is it makes so much sense.
We were shocked because everyone was saying, you're proposing to arm teachers. I said, no, I'm not. I'm acknowledging the fact that they can be armed under current law, because in 1995, we had so much respect for the Second Amendment, we refused to deny that to people simply because they were teachers.
And it's the way it should be. And again, you're right. And like I said, like I was saying earlier, I've talked to friends of mine that are teachers, and they agree with what you just said. And what I'm saying is it would be beneficial to have a training program for teachers so that they could be that first line of defense. And to be honest with you, I've got a daughter. She's 2.5 years old. I would feel more comfortable knowing that I'm sending my daughter off to school where I can't be there to protect her. Because myself, I look at myself as the first protector for her. But if I'm sending her to school, then I want people there that I trust to be able to protect her and the other students. I don't want them to be a victim or something like that happen.
Brian, what's the first reaction on a school campus when there's an active shooter?
What's the first reaction from who? The teachers or the students?
No, the administration, the security.
Well, they locked down.
They locked down the school with your daughter and the killer inside.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's
and now
where as
you
a parent,
can't get in
I
there.
would be going nuts.
Nobody can get in there to help.
Yep. Yeah, I would be going nuts knowing that there's an active shooter. And look, I'm a Marine. I move to the sound of chaos. I would have no problem running into a burning building or an active shooter to defend anyone, not just my daughter, because it's kind of bred into me. And I know there's other people that are out there the same, including teachers, who would go actively engage a shooter to defend the students that they're tasked with. That's their responsibility to defend.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Brian. And I love your attitude. You go toward chaos. We need more people like you and a lot less like Obama. You know, Obama could have been a man today. He could have stood up there and said, you know what, look, this gun control crap ain't working. Every 5 minutes I propose more gun control, and let me be honest, it ain't going to help anybody. We need to arm the teachers. We need to arm those law-abiding citizens and allow them to exercise their Second Amendment right. And if you're a mass murderer, if you have evil in your heart, you're going to get taken down before you get to have your first victim. How you like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we got to take a break.
It was good talking with you. I got to get going. So
it was great talking to you, Brian. Thank you. Thanks for calling in again.
All right.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break. 323-746-TALK. We got an email from one listener about the Australia experiment, and we'll take more of your calls coming right up. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. If you're just tuning in to the Radio Free California Network, where have you been? We're having a great conversation about how we wish to live and what kind of society we live in, and what, if anything, we should do or not do in response to the latest mass murder committed on a college campus in a gun-free zone. I'm going to go back to the phones, but I got an interesting email about the Australia experiment. And if that was you who sent it, you might want to call in and we'll discuss it. But meanwhile, I'm going to go back to the phones. We got Stephen in Sacramento. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. How are you today?
I am doing very well. My heart is breaking for the families who have lost their young ones. I mean, you send your kid off to college, they're in their, late teens, early 20s. It's kind of a great time in their lives. It's full of all kinds of uncertainty with them bringing home girlfriends or boyfriends. That's the kind of stuff you should be dealing with, not a report of, we don't know how many. It was 7, then it was 10. Now it might be as many as 13 who have been slaughtered on campus while they were trying to study by a deeply disturbed individual. And as I said, sometimes you just have to work through your own emotions and not have a knee-jerk reaction, as the president obviously did again. Sometimes things are just really painful and ugly, and they mean something, but we'll miss the meaning if we only compartmentalize it into a stereotype or a narrative that then allows us to dismiss it.
Right. Well, like Brian before, I'm also combat experienced, and when I hear these stories, because I called the day those news reporters were shot cold, in cold blood live on air.
Right.
And these things, dude, they break my heart, and I I'm not ashamed to admit they make me cry because it's just senseless. It's disturbing. But then Obama gets on the TV and I get pissed. I am so sick of his crap, his hypocrisy. He wants to talk about gun control. Look what he did, or he was part of, in Chicago, his hometown that he brags about, where they banned handgun use. And there is an outrageous murder rate in Chicago right now. The streets of Chicago, you would think you were in Beirut, Lebanon. It's just unbelievable. And he wants to come out here and try to inflict his policies on us. And, of course, it's Congress's fault. Whenever he doesn't get his way, it's Congress's fault.
Right. But between Los Angeles and Baltimore, with 194 killings just this year, and Chicago, you've got cities that have some of the strictest, tightest gun control, where guns are even absolutely banned and verboten, like in Washington, D.C., and yet the killings continue because criminals don't care.
And not only do they have those ridiculous gun laws, but then they ask, and more recently, they're tying police officers' hands now, even more so than they were before. The cops are the bad guys. That's the one that really gets to me. And, I'm being sarcastic because I know they're not. But it's unbelievable. He's got the nerve to go out and tell the public that he has the solutions when his solutions have been proven failures. His party, the progressives or liberals, whatever you want to call them.
But let's leave the politics out of it just for a second, because all that matters in the end is results. And he made a comment, and I Googled it over the break. He made a comment that those states with the strictest gun laws have the fewest gun deaths. And you have, when you look up that phrase that way, it takes you to all these left-wing sites that basically are pushing an agenda and a narrative. And one of their big issues is, do they require a gun permit? And in every one of these states, it's a no. And they string these together as if they're somehow significant. But when it's like saying, hey, there's a lot of accidents and a lot of people are being killed in traffic fatalities, but do you require a driver's license? Well, of course, there's some sort of requirement that you learn how to drive and you take a test or what have you. So all these areas have varying degrees of that. But when you get into a city like Baltimore, none of that matters. You are in a war zone, as you described, that is more dangerous than some of the places where we are actually at war.
And criminals are not afraid of our justice system. They know that they're not going to get prosecuted to the full extent. I mean, it's just like the Aurora, Colorado shooter. Because one juror didn't agree with the death penalty, he's not going to be executed now. And he should be, if anybody should be. They determined he wasn't insane. He was, legally sane when he did this, which I never doubted. But one person, I think if we did what Texas used to, is use your death penalty, and I think it does work. But nobody's afraid of the law. Nobody's afraid of being put on death row because it's just a life sentence, just a different name for it now.
Nobody ever came back from the death.
Going to jail.
Nobody ever came back from the death penalty and killed anyone. If you get the death penalty, You're gone. And now let's say that we don't even execute it and we sit you in jail for 20 years. You're still not going to kill anybody, at least out here. You may figure out a way to kill somebody inside, but that's a separate matter. And that's a big part of this. We're liberalizing and trying to be understanding of those who have committed murder. We've even tried to weaken laws here in California so that those who committed murder who were under a certain age can get a reprieve, they can get out of jail, they can basically have the life that they denied their victim. And at the same time, we're depriving you of your ability to defend your life and your family, and it just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Well, Stephen, thank you for calling in, and thank you, by the way, for your service as well to our country. And
my pleasure. Thank you.
Godspeed, my friend. Hey, we will continue to take your calls. We're just going to talk about it. Whatever your viewpoint. If you completely disagree with me, call in. Well, maybe we'll have an interesting convo. You never know. 323-746-TALK is the number, and we will be right back after these messages. Hey, you're listening to the Tim Donnelly Show. We are on 3 to 6 every weekday. You can connect with us at timdonnellyshow.com. We stream live there. You can check previous shows as well as reach out. Facebook, Twitter, email, and of course, the good old-fashioned Alexander Graham Bell invention that you are texting on currently. We're going to go back to the phones. We've got Ed. Ed, welcome back to the show.
Yeah. Hi, Kim. Nice to talk to you. Hey, what I'd like to bring up is a parallel which all of us remember very much so. Do you remember the Twin Towers? All of us do?
Yep.
Do you remember what happened with all of the debates in the Senate and the House over gun control?
Help me out here.
Okay. We had any pilot or co-pilot who wanted to get a pistol and take it in the cockpit with them, that they finally okayed it. You remember that? No?
That's you know what, that was a long time ago, and you're got a good memory to bring that back up.
Yes, it was. Now they're trying to kill the same thing, but basically on the same parallel. But look what's happened to our airlines. I feel pretty safe flying the airlines now. I don't have any problems flying anymore. And I would assume that
other than getting harassed by TSA, which is not very effective, I feel a lot better knowing there's air marshals. I feel better knowing that the pilots are armed and the doors are impenetrable, basically.
Yeah.
So, those were good.
Phil, I like that Phil guy who calls in. I wouldn't mind being in combat with him, not a bit.
You mean Brian? The combat Marine. Yeah. He's a good man, and he's out there training people in the safe and effective use of firearms, which I think is a long lost skill that we cannot afford to lose in this country, because we are the sheepdog of the world. And I don't mean just our military. I mean American citizens. Something about us and the attitude we have toward freedom has made this world a better place. And I'm tired of hearing people trash us and demonize us and say we have too many guns. We don't have enough guns. You can't have too many guns.
Well, when I was in Korea, I got to bring up, I don't want to extend it, but all of these Marines that you've talked to, they will recognize this guy's name. Chesty Puller. Do you remember him? He was a great colonel at that time in the Korean War. And we were up at the reservoir, and the Chinese totally surrounded us. And you know what Chesty's remarks were?
What's that?
I got him right where I want him now. When you shoot, you can't miss.
Okay.
That was his response, and this went out through the whole Marine Corps, so it is only me saying this. But okay, Kim,
well,
I thank you so much. I just wanted to throw that in about the pilots, because boy,
that's a good parallel, Ed. Thanks for the call. And we will. I'm going to go to this email that I got from a listener, and it's entitled "The Australian Gun Law Update," which, if you remember, both Great Britain, the UK, and Australia enacted the strictest gun laws in the world, basically erasing the Second Amendment. Hi, Yanks. Thought you would all like to see the real figures from down under. It's been 12 months since gun owners in Australia were forced by a new law to surrender 640,381 personal firearms to be destroyed by our own government. Program costing more than Australian taxpayers more than $500 million. The first results are now in. Australia-wide, homicides are up 6.2%. Assaults are up almost 10%. And armed robberies are up a whopping 44%. Yes, 44%. In the state of Victoria alone, homicides with firearms are now up 300%. Three times as many. While law-abiding citizens turned them in, the criminals did not, and criminals still possess their guns. While figures over the previous 25 years showed a steady decrease in armed robbery, this change steadily upward in the past 12 months since the criminals are now guaranteed that their prey is unarmed. And it's just logical. And thank you, by the way, to the individual that sent that in. I think that makes a great point. And by the way, if you want to join the conversation, 323-746-TALK. That's 323-746-8255 for those of you who are driving. My question is very simple. I want to know, when the president says he wants more gun control, and of course, he doesn't just say gun control. He says common sense. That those who oppose common sense gun control. I wonder if Hitler talked that way when he was talking about taking away people's liberty. Because when you take my gun, you take my freedom. Now, you're probably not going to take my freedom while I'm handing you the gun. You're going to come back later. Now, one way that you take away freedom is you get everyone to register their guns. Then the government has a list, and if the government decides to turn on its people, as Hitler did, you just confiscate everybody's guns. So there is a serious and long tradition in this country of distrust of the government, not because we think the government's innately evil, but because we distrust the evil of centralized power. Because once you centralize and create sort of absolute power, it'll be abused. We know that. History has shown us that. It's just human nature. So when Obama is saying, and the attitude with which he came out at that press conference, it was, instead of wearing a suit and tie, even though he probably did, I wasn't watching it on TV, I was listening on the radio, I felt like the president was in a sweater. And he was kind of leaning on the podium. This is the attitude, okay? I'm not saying he did this.
He was actually in a suit in the press room, a formal press conference.
Thanks for ruining my whole reverie here. So, but it reminded me of the Jimmy Carter sweater speech. That kind of defeated attitude, that kind of whining crybaby type approach. Instead of coming out strong, as a president should, and saying, look, our hearts are with the people of Oregon today. Our hearts are with those families. As a matter of fact, I'm going to fly up there tomorrow and go spend some time with them. I mean, that would have been presidential. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your policies are. That's one of your roles, is to make the country, comfort the country, lead the country. This goes beyond politics. This is just sort of a moral authority. It's part of being, having the power of the bully pulpit. Instead, he was just like leaning on it, like exasperated. I can't believe that we haven't passed anything. He almost sounded like Pierce Morgan. 45 people have been dead in these mass shootings, and not a single gun law in X number of days. Sorry, but your gun laws ain't going to do a damn thing. So my question to you, Mr. President, is, do you really just want more people to die because you don't want to give them the tools to defend their lives? Because you don't want to take that risk of reversing this trend of gun confiscation, of literally infringing the Second Amendment at every chance you get, because your ultimate goal is to take it away altogether so that Americans can now be under the control of their government rather than an effective détente with their government. I think it's much healthier when the government fears the people. Now, I don't mean they fear the people like we're all a bunch of crazed, anarchists who are going to go blow things up and shoot government officials. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying that many of you might remember when I was involved in a case with Child Protective Services, and the government came to the door of someone's home, didn't have a warrant, but because they had so much power from CPS, when the husband came home, they tackled him, took his keys, and broke into their home. The cops are on videotape with their guns, their hands on their guns, barging into the home of a free American who did not commit a crime. And they didn't have the proper legal authority, even though CPS did. My point is, there should be more protections for civil liberties in that regard, because that's just as great a threat. Even though those cops didn't pull their guns and use them, there was this threat and force and intimidation, and the police participated in kidnapping a kid because they didn't like the mother's getting a second opinion. And they put the kid in jeopardy by taking him back to the hospital the mother didn't want him treated at. She had already arranged to get him treated at another hospital. Well, nobody's shooting there. But that kind of force and coercion is just as dangerous. Now, when you know that people are armed, you can't storm into their houses. You can't break down their doors and do it with impunity over and over and over again and get away with it like they did in the pogroms in Warsaw, when the Nazis rolled into town and the Sitzkrieg was going on and nobody did anything while the Nazis took everyone's guns away and then literally killed people in assembly line fashion. So today, kind of a new tactic. I'm saying, hey, let's just sit in it, feel it, talk about it. I don't really care where you come from on this issue, but I want to hear your thoughts. 323-746-TALK. What does this say about our society? I think that was a song back in the 70s. We'll be right back. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. Hey, you have found your way to the Radio Free California Network, and we are talking today about what this means. What does it mean for our society for this horrific, tragic mass murder spree in Roseburg, Oregon? Going to go back to the phones and get your take. Hey, welcome to the program. You are on air.
Hello?
Yes, you're live on air.
Well, it's just really upsetting that we're seeing a complete breakdown in our society, in family life, A lot of people are saying that there's just a complete lack of religion. And I think it's more than that. I think it's a lack of morality.
What do you mean?
I mean, when you see people in the street and they're attacking each other, or in grocery stores, and people aren't helping anymore. All they do is pull out their video cameras and videotape. They're not supporting the police. They're not interjecting and helping the victim.
What do you think? What do you think of the online commenters, many of whom were anonymous, but some of whom had screen names, who egged him on?
I think that they need to be investigated. I run, along with other organizers, rallies throughout the state of California, excuse me, for preservation of our civil liberties. But, you know, there's free speech, but that only is protected when it's not inflammatory or insightful.
So you're saying that it could be that they could be maybe charged as accomplices?
I don't know so much about accomplices, but egging them on, definitely. Insightful, yeah. But as far as accomplices to the act, I don't know if even California.
Yeah, I don't think you could make that. I don't think you could make that legal case, but certainly it is immoral at the very least. I don't know
Definitely.
that it's illegal, but
correct.
Crazy. Hey, what's your first name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Carolyn, and I'm calling from the high desert.
Nice.
Victor.
Well, thank you for your call.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go to Mike in Wrightwood. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. You know, I'm actually working with a kid right now that he's having a hard time with the court system and getting in the military because he got charged with a misdemeanor for an argument that he walked away from a fight, but the cop had pulled up just as they were getting ready to fight and just saw both people going at it. And because of the words, gestures, and everything else, I guess California's got this thing now that they can charge you with. It's a little bit like disturbing the peace. So there's a way to, punish people with at least something, instead of just saying they can say what they want. But, I don't know if you got a chance to see Netanyahu today and the way he talked and what he said about Iran and what they've done since they just did an agreement. And then we talked about, getting rid of our weapons. When we got somebody that's over there telling us that Iran's going to come over here, they're going to do what they can, they're going to develop what they can and do things. And, in the same day, we're talking about, well, maybe we shouldn't let people have weapons. And I really will never understand how law-abiding people think that if they give up their weapons, that the criminals are going to walk in, hand them over, and say, okay. I mean, we've seen it too many times.
Mike, we've been conditioned and indoctrinated to respect and uphold the law, even though our government doesn't have any respect for it. It continually undermines the rule of law, but we have that in our nature. But the problem is that we've forgotten our beginnings, and our beginnings were about it was the government's role to defend our rights and secure our rights. And we have a natural right to defend our lives, and that comes from God. It doesn't come from the government. That life was given to us by God, and we have a natural right to defend it. And firearms are one of the tools that we have inculcated into our Bill of Rights. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I think actually morality and religion, becomes, something very similar because, in order to really care and have the morals to do the right thing, you got to have some kind of consequences of what you're going to do. So if you don't believe there's a God, you don't believe that there's any, effects of what you do in this life that'll affect what happens after you die, you start taking away a person's, concern. I mean, when we had a country that really believed, in Christianity or any other religions on how to treat people with respect and dignity and to care, and they were all, doing whatever it was they were doing with their families, Like they used to say, a family that prays together stays together. Regardless of what religion. It seemed like things were a lot better off. And then as we started taking it out of schools, we started taking it out of government, or because it was always supposed to not be there, and look for anything in the world we could find wrong with it. Then the morality went down with the religion.
You got a good point there, Mike. Hey, we got to take a break. We will be right back with more of your calls. 323-746-TALK. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clays. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344. Don't look now, but Hillary is still in trouble. Just a couple months ago in June, she was in the early 60s. Well, I'm not talking about her age. I'm talking about poll numbers. Now she's dropped double digits down to 41%. Bernie Sanders is up at 23. Biden is at 20. And Biden's now talking about entering the race more openly. He is saying he's going to skip the first debate, which means he's more than likely going to get in. And that's going to spell perhaps the end of the first woman president being a liberal or a leftist or a crony capitalist leftist fake. I don't know, but I think it spells good news for America, because I'd rather have a real socialist than a fake capitalist and a fake an individual who doesn't believe in what they believe in and who isn't honest about what they believe in and who is willing to sell off this country. At least a real socialist, everybody would fight. And you would wind up with a powerful opposition Congress. Most of today, we've been talking about the tragic mass murder committed by a young man in Oregon at the Umpqua Community College campus earlier today. He shot at least 20 people, 13 of whom have died, and we're just talking. We're not knee-jerk reacting. We're not calling for more gun control. We're not calling for spending on mental health. We're trying to work through this and see what you think. What does it say about our society? John from North Carolina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Radio Governor of California. I want to, first of all, say thanks to Brian. Good ideas, good thoughts, all good conversations. And I want to give a shout-out to my dad for Marine Corps World War II, my father-in-law, Marine Corps Korea, and my brother-in-law, Marine Corps Desert Storm.
You're surrounded by Marines.
Yeah, I thought I was going to Vietnam, but I missed it by about 4 or 5 years. So my mother insisted I go to college, so that's what I did. I'm glad I did. And just for the record, I think that reservist that was in the Waffle House, we never did get to this the other evening, but I think he did the right thing by just leaving. It's like you said, it's their revenue. And I'm sure he found someplace else to eat.
Sure. There's an IHOP down the street. Pancakes.
I hop down the street, whatever. Yep, exactly. But everybody knows there's a difference between taking the law in your own hands and protecting your family, yourself on your own property. But I wish local police, law enforcement would be more involved in support concealed carry gun owners, because you don't ever want somebody to hesitate in a critical situation. If you need to make a split decision that you may only make once in your life, and like I've said before, I hope I never have to do that. I just want to be a statistic. But you need to protect the people that are in that and not know that the law is going to come after you for doing the right thing. That's what bugs me as much as anything. Brian talked about that 4-minute response time, but if you can control a situation and buy them a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, I think you've done a huge thing, as you more or less alluded to. An hour or so.
Can you imagine 4 minutes ticking by?
Yeah,
and ticking
like
and
you said,
ticking
it's
and
an
ticking.
eternity. That's
a lifetime, and everyone there is paralyzed with fear, wondering who's going to be the next victim. So you literally, as you said, you've got a couple of seconds to react. I would certainly hope that I would, have the courage to do the right thing. I've never been in that situation, so I can't speak to it. But I would hope I wouldn't be paralyzed with fear. You remember when 9/11 happened, and we got the story of Todd Beamer.
Mm-hmm.
See, I related to that, and
from my
the way
home
I
state.
related. What's that?
I said from my home state. I think he's the one that took the plane down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
That is correct. He what he did is he got the passengers together. He told his family, "I'm going to do something," and then because he stood up and had that courage, other people started surrounding him. And then they even got together. They got on the phone. I think he had his wife on the phone, if I'm remembering correctly, with 911, or somebody was. It might have been him. But then they said they recited the 23rd Psalm, said the Lord's Prayer, and basically then he said, "Let's roll."
Yep.
Well, my question for me wasn't that we see a movie and we think automatically we identify with the hero because we all want to be the hero.
Right.
What happened to me in that moment was wondering if I would have the courage. Would I stand up and be counted, or would I lower my head, put my arms around my family and say, "I'm going to protect mine"? Because I had young kids at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that made such a profound impact on me that I got a lot more involved in civic life as a result of that questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think how I live my life is how ultimately I will answer that question, as all of us do. But I feel now more than ever, we're living in such a time that it's incumbent upon us. The government ain't going to protect us. They can't save us. They can't protect our freedom. They become the greatest threat to it. It is up to us. Sorry, I keep banging the mic with my hat. Now I got to take my hat off. But, the hat looks good. Of course, it is radio.
Yes, that's right. I can't see it, but I'm sure it does look awesome.
Probably driving you nuts. Anyway, John, you call in and I don't even let you talk.
That's okay. I
you
strike up a good conversation for the next caller. I just, the other thing that bugs me is there's ads on different shows that now they want you to sign up for, legal representation, and it kind of makes you fearful of doing. That's why I brought up the difference between taking the law in your own hands and protecting a family, or being in a movie theater, or being in a restaurant, being in a church where you do the right thing. It's like they want to come after you. That's the impression they leave me with, anyhow.
And you know what? You know what I think we need to do as a society, as people who believe in freedom and support that individual who is acting as that sheepdog for the rest of us. That's where we ought to start some GoFundMes and some crowdfunding. When that person gets in trouble, who you don't even know, but they did the right thing, and now they're getting nailed to the cross.
Yep.
We stand up and have their back.
Exactly.
And to heck with all these lawyers and all this other stuff. Well, they're going to need money to hire a lawyer, but the whole point is, if we do that, then the next guy's not going to be so fearful, or the next gal.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's one thing a gun is an equalizer. Doesn't matter if
And
you're a man
like,
or a woman. All that matters is whether or not you have the courage to point, make sure you have the safety off, one in the chamber, and activate that trigger.
And it's like Brian said, you could take it from 13 down to 7 or 8 or even 2. But you know what? The bottom line is 2 is too many. It should be 0.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But if
all right,
enough
buddy, I'll let you go.
Yeah. No, that
Go
sounds
ahead.
good, John. I'll go ahead and mute you, and then I'm going to finish my point. If enough, and by the way, thanks for your call. If enough of these deranged individuals who are deeply mentally disturbed on some level or another for one reason or another, we don't know. We just know that evil was in his heart the day before he communicated it. He got encouragement to go commit the evil. He went and committed the evil. He took lives. He took innocent lives for no reason, no discernible reason that we can understand. But if he knew he were going to be met by 3 concealed carry individuals out of 20 people that he was shooting at, I don't know. I can't guarantee. I don't know if it would change the outcome. Well, I know it would change the outcome, but I don't know if it would change whether or not he never shows up. But I'd like to increase the odds of survival for those who are still alive. I mean, that's the whole point. Whatever step we take should increase the chance of survival. More laws are not going to increase the chance of survival because laws are just a bank shot. They only work on those who actually respect the law, who would never do such a thing. But the antidote is to arm individuals, make sure they have sufficient training, and then have their back. I agree with John. Anyway, 323-746-TALK. I want to hear from you. What do you think this means? What should we do? What does it mean about our society? What's the takeaway? 323-746-TALK. We'll be right back with your calls. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. This is the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, former California State Assemblyman and Radio Governor, California. And we're talking about the tragedy. We're talking about our rights. We're talking about threats and how to neutralize them. We always talk about the threat of the government. A little off the topic I've been discussing, but just read an interesting article on what is going on with Russia bombing Syria and defending and backing Assad. And I don't think Obama and his administration understand it, or they understand it, they don't care. But basically, Russia's on the wrong side. They're bombing the good guys who have been fighting this evil dictator. And I hate to even mention his name, Mitt Romney, because I don't much care for him. after he signed his name to a smear piece against me. But do you remember when he was in that debate with Barack Hussein Obama, and they asked him, what was the greatest geopolitical threat? It was moderator Bob Schieffer. And Governor Mitt Romney said it was Russia, and then carefully explained why. Barack Obama, in true Saul Alinsky fashion, ridiculed Romney by stating, Governor, the 1980s are calling and they want their foreign policy back. And then Romney was assaulted and ridiculed by liberal progressives and leftists the next day. And now we've seen Vladimir Putin taken over Crimea, attacked a sovereign state of Ukraine, and is now reestablishing its military presence in the Arctic. And the Russians begin bombing in Syria, but not the ISIS positions. They bombed the city of Homs, where the Syrian rebels have been fighting against Bashar Assad are based. So they're fighting. They're fighting against us and the rest of the world. And the pathetic, the so-called foreign policy president, he's going to be so brilliant at foreign policy. I don't even think they understand it. I don't think they understand it. And here's the thing. Our government not understanding who the enemy is, that's a major, massive threat. I'm going to take a quick call here. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. I just had something real quick to say. I grew up in really, really bad neighborhoods, and I hear all these things. Me and my sister get into some big debates about gun control and things like that. And as I grew up, I had friends that sold guns. I had friends that you go to their house and their older brother sold guns. I never seen a criminal ever in my life, and I grew up with them. I changed my life now. I work and, but I never seen any criminal ever go to a gun store to buy a gun. You go down the street and you go to a house. You know what I mean? I used to, my older friend Steve, okay, my friend Steve, his older brother named Pooh used to sell out of his house. And then I used to go and be playing in one room, Pooh's in the next room selling guns and drugs. Wow. That's how I grew up. I mean, a lot of people speak about this, and they speak from the outside looking in. I'm speaking from the inside looking out. And I feel like me and my sister are like, don't you remember Pooh used to sell guns out of his house? How can you sit here and tell me that stopping guns is going to stop a criminal from coming in? The only reason people didn't break into our house is because my dad had guns. He was a licensed carrier. But people were like, wait a minute, don't break into that house because he's got guns.
That's right. Let me ask you a question. Do you own a firearm today?
No, I did when I met my wife, and she's kind of scared of guns too. So when we got married and we moved in together, I got rid of the guns. But I felt better with a gun. But I also lived in an extremely rough neighborhood. That's why I'm speaking out like this. Yeah, so she said, I feel more comfortable if you didn't bring the guns, and I got rid of them.
No worries. I appreciate your call. What's your first name?
My name's Hanoi. It's spelled Hanoi.
Well, Hanoi, thank you for calling the show and sharing your experience. It's very insightful.
No okay, bye.
And we're going to bring on the line with us now Sam Paredes, who is the executive director of Gun Owners of California. And this is an organization that fights for your gun rights. And right now, as we join him, Sam Paredes is exercising his Second Amendment right in Wyoming on a 10-day hunting trip. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim, it's great to be with you. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. We're having a great conversation, and Yeah, we're covering all sides of this thing. And, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on is because you've been fighting to defend the Second Amendment. You've been deeply involved in this fight. Your wife's father was legend in the legislature, Bill Richardson, give me the title of his book, Confrontational Politics. And
correct.
And here's the thing that the media is doing whenever there's one of these things. It's no longer a mass murderer. It is a mass shooter. It is no longer about killing. It is about shooting. He is a gunman, not a killer, or a murderer, or whatever you want. Whereas I think we should accurately describe who he is and what he wanted to do, and not get obsessed on the tools he used to carry out his evil. And so I just wanted to get your take on where do you think we're going next? Because while you were out enjoying your Second Amendment rights and not watching news conferences, the president came out, leaned against the podium, and said, I'm so tired of this. I'm so sick of this. We've had these every day. It's an everyday thing, and we just need basically to erase the Second Amendment one new law at a time.
Tim, you are absolutely correct in your assessment. The mainstream media is now framing this issue as a gun owner issue as opposed to what they should say. We would be surprised if they were to say that we have an evil, demented criminal out there who committed an atrocity for his own purposes, where he lined up students and teachers asking them if they were religious, and if they were Christians, he would shoot them in the head. And if they did not answer because they were so afraid or said that they were not, he would shoot them in the legs. This is pure evil. That is what's going on. We have a problem with evil in this world, a crime problem,
Sam,
not
can I
a
hold
gun
you?
Control problem.
Sam, can I hold you over for a minute, or am I going to lose you?
No, we're good. I'm stuck in a traffic jam, so I'm here as long as you need me.
Come right back. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clay. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344. Hey, you have found the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor of California. Have on the line with me none other than Gun Owners of California Executive Director Sam Paredes, who is in the wildlands of Wyoming, but unfortunately stuck in traffic at the moment. So we get to benefit from him sharing his insights. And Sam, you made some great points about the lamestream media and about what this agenda is really all about. And the bottom line is, it's about reframing. Every time one of these events happens, we see the media using language and supporting a narrative that is taking us in the direction of Australia and Great Britain, the UK, which is total disarmament. It's the erasure of the Second Amendment bit by bit, piece by piece, and they never let a crisis go to waste in true Alinsky style.
Tim, you are absolutely correct. We are our opponents, those people that are reframing the issue and turning it into an anti-gun diatribe are the people who want control over us, knowing full well that they will never have the kind of control they want over the general population as long as they have firearms. Because they know that as long as Americans, law-abiding citizens, have firearms, they will protect and defend their rights, ultimately, if they have to, by use of force. Now, our founding fathers gave us a political process, thankfully, where we can fight for our rights, and we've got a lot of fighting that we have to do. The actual number of these atrocities that have occurred is not much greater, hasn't gone up very much or down very much from what is normal. It is the kind of attention that is now attached to these types of shootings and the way they twist it into this happened because we have too many guns on the street.
Well, right, Sam, but I got a question, because you operate here in the state of California, and within the state of California, there's a bill that is being considered to further disarm people on college campuses. And that would include former law enforcement. It would include former military. And in addition to everyone else not being able to carry their concealed carry weapon on campus. But a concealed weapons carrier who knows how to use their firearm could cut that 4-minute response time that is the average time for law enforcement to arrive. And that doesn't mean that that's the average time for which law enforcement could be effective, because if they've locked down the campus, who knows? Nobody knows who's where, what, and how to get in. There's chaos. But if somebody was on scene, or multiple persons were on scene, and they simply could shoot back, even if they didn't hit him, it would distract or buy time.
Tim, the reality is this: we have tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of law-abiding concealed carry holders in the state of California. Not a single one of them has ever committed a crime on a campus in the state of California, period. SB 707, the bill that you're talking about that is on the governor's desk, will prohibit law-abiding concealed weapons permits holders to carry on campus or on campus property. You know, sometimes they own office buildings that are not on campus, and they own experimental forests and experimental agricultural properties. You will not be able to carry your concealed firearm, even with a permit, unless you get the permission of the administrator. What they're saying is that we're going to transfer the responsibility of deciding who is okay to have to carry a concealed weapon, like a sheriff or chief of police, and we're going to put it on the shoulders of a school administrator who knows less than nothing about firearms ownership, concealed carry, or responsible use of firearms. Again, Americans, Californians are extremely responsible. That is proven out by the fact that we have so many CCW holders, and not a single crime has ever been committed on a school campus. So what is it that they're going after? What are they trying to prevent? The author of the bill, Senator Lois Wolk, said, well, it's because we have these sheriffs in the state of California who are issuing CCWs to every Tom, Dick, and Harry like popcorn. Wow, what a slap in the face of our law enforcement officers, elected law enforcement officers.
Yeah, but the Ninth Circuit found that California has been disarmed and legislatively infringed, their Second Amendment legislatively infringed out of existence because of all these different laws. So that's laughable on its face.
That's correct. I agree. And we are still fighting the legal process. That is one of the three legs of fighting the battle to preserve our rights. One is the fight in the legislature against anti-gun legislation, anything that would work to prohibit our rights. Second is working in elections to elect people who love and support and defend the Constitution, who take that oath of office that they take seriously. And the third leg is the judicial leg, and that is where we will fight for lawsuits, both against anti-gun lawsuits and for pro-gun lawsuits that reinstate our rights and returns the Second Amendment to what it should be. Tim.
So, Sam, what is your website? Just in case I don't
our website is,
ask you.
Okay. That's www.gunownersca.com, NERSCA.com, or Google Gun Owners of California.
Yeah,
and you can get to our website.
You don't have to do the www anymore. Just put gunownerca.com. So that's easy, gunownerca.com. Because look, you guys are fighting the good fight, and you can get information, I assume, on your website about some of these laws, and because I think right now a lot of people are starting to feel nervous about their own rights now at risk because of President Obama. He's going to be loose for 2 more years, and he's got accomplices here in the California legislature, too many accomplices.
Yes.
The Marxist progressive agenda is very clear. They want to control everything, everyone, and they don't want you to have the freedom. They don't want you to have your right to carry because that makes them nervous.
Tim, they know full well that they cannot prevent criminals from getting guns. What they are, in essence, saying is that you, the law-abiding citizen, we're going to put you in a situation where if you are ever confronted by somebody who we cannot prevent from getting guns, you're going to have no chance because we don't want you to have guns.
Well, did you hear the caller who came on just before you joined us? You might not have heard him. His name was Hanoi, and he grew up in a rough neighborhood. And his neighbor was the older brother of the neighbor was selling guns out of their house. They had a separate room for the gun and drug sales, and all the criminals came to that house to buy their guns illegally. And he said of all the criminals he knew growing up, and he had been in trouble himself, but he's cleaned up and is now a righteous citizen. But he said they never bought their guns at the gun store, so none of these laws apply to them.
Right, Tim. That's why they call us law-abiding, because we abide by the laws. If we don't like the laws, we work to change the laws. We don't break the laws. They are putting all the attention, and everything that they do affects us and impacts the criminal element, not at all. Your caller gave a very vivid example of that, and people should pay attention to that, because that is plain, flat-out truth. If the criminal element can import into America and into California illicit drugs by the tons or illicit stuff into the state, what makes you think that they're not going to be able to bring in any kind of gun they want to bring in? And
they're trafficking guns all over the place,
whatever they want. Yeah,
and we know it. And the bottom line is that you've got citizens terrified because there's so many laws and there's so many different ways they can get in trouble, and that's exactly how the government wants it. But you know what? We're educating people, and our credo here is very simple. It is inform, educate, and engage. And Sam, I appreciate you taking a couple minutes out of your vacation, your hunting trip. Hope you have a great one up there in Wyoming. But it's Sam Paredes, Executive Director, Gun Owners of California, and the website is gunownersca.com. You ought to join them and support the work they're doing, because they're fighting for your rights. Sam, thanks for coming on.
Tim, it's my pleasure, Tim. Thank you for being a beacon of freedom, of light, of salt in spreading the good news and waking people to action. So we need your continued work out there. God bless you.
Godspeed to you, my friend, and happy hunting. Hey, 323-746-TALK. That's our number. We will take your calls if you get in time. Final segment coming up. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. You have found the Tim Donnelly Show, which is heard 3 to 6 weekly on the Radio Free California Network. Every weekday, excuse me. And I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in California. And we're talking about gun control. We're talking about the tragic shooting in Oregon and what it means. What does it mean? What does it say about our society? What does it say about our country when our president is so lackadaisical, so slovenly in his approach to such a heavy issue, and he comes up with such a generic response with no details, with no plan, with no compelling case. He all he has to do is trot it out there and say gun control, gun control, gun control. We need more laws. Laws don't protect lives. Guns do. We need more freedom. We don't need more laws. So, Mr. President, take your gun control and shove it. We want freedom. We want the right to defend our lives and the lives of our loved ones and other individuals who are at risk. And they're put at risk because you created a gun-free zone and you endorse gun-free zones, and your party, the leftist Marxist progressives, want to strip away every last gun, one gun classification at a time. And this is what you do. And you know you do this. The public doesn't, because they're just sort of sheep. They just go along, and they very low information individuals who they hear words like assault weapon and high capacity magazine. You know what? If you're going to have a gun for self-defense, it damn well better have a high capacity magazine, because what if you're not a real experienced shooter? You don't want to be reloading in the middle of trying to defend your life. But the government doesn't trust Americans anymore. Well, you know what? I don't trust the government. And I'm not alone. The poll we talked about the other day, a mere 2% of the populace trust the government virtually all the time. I bet if you took that poll 50 years ago, you would have been half the people, at least. But we've seen the corruption of an ever-growing, ever-expanding government that has to feed on your freedom and on your finances and on our future in order to survive. It's like one of these creatures out of a movie. You know the movies where I always like them, where the computer becomes smarter than the people, and it takes over, and they have to figure out a way to destroy it, but it's everywhere. It can track you through the surveillance cameras at a liquor store. It can track you everywhere and anywhere, through every grid and every single type of computer that's connected throughout the world. That's our government now. They have to feed off of you, kind of like the Matrix, where you're plugged in, you're just a battery. They just suck the life out of you. I think a lot of Americans are tired of this. They're waking up. I know that with my experience here in California with SB 277, watching Democrats, I got to tell you, I can tell you that I've talked to at least a dozen former liberal Democrats. They might still be liberals, but they ain't Democrats anymore. And most of them aren't Republicans either, but they're no longer voting Democrat, who have told me time after time after time in different ways, hey, I figured it out. The government's the threat. I'm buying a gun. If the government can do this, I'm buying a gun. I told my husband the other day, I'm buying a gun. liberal Democrat union school teacher, lifelong union member, said gun control ain't about public safety. It's about control. I swear, when I heard that, I wanted to give that woman a hug and just sing hallelujah. Because people are waking up. And they can no longer divide us when it comes down to our own personal security and the security of our families and our communities. Common sense. There is no common sense gun control, but there is common sense freedom. There's common sense policy whereby we trust the people. Of course, they have to meet criterion. You get a CCW, you got to get a background check. You got to, they do a pretty vigorous one. Got to do some training. Got to pass some scrutiny. You got to re-up it every once in a while. So it's not some unregulated thing. Bottom line is you ought to be able to carry. And you ought to be able to carry in gun-free zones because that's where you're needed the most when you least expect it. And, you know, sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. It ain't going to cost the government, isn't going to have to raise your taxes, it isn't going to cost anybody a penny more. This is literally about securing your rights. And you know, the government, that was their original mission in the Declaration of Independence, was to secure and protect your rights, the inalienable ones. And you know, the first one listed liberty, the second one life. Life, liberty, and pursuit. I got that backwards. But you can't have any liberty if you don't have a life. You can't pursue happiness without a life. Voila, Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You know why I say those 26 words over and over and over again to you? I want you to memorize them. Write them on your heart. Write them on your soul. Understand. Tattoo them on your arm. Understand that firearms ain't about hunting. They ain't about trap shooting. They ain't about fun and games. They are about freedom. And our freedom has never been so fragile as it is today. And it's up to you to stand up and defend it so that you can pass it on to the next generation. Inform, educate, and engage. That is the goal of the Tim Donnelly Show. I don't do this show alone. I want to thank Sean McNeil, acting producer, engineer, extraordinary technological genius. All of our sponsors and you. Without you, we don't have a show. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show, out.
At the twilight